Nerdrotic.com.
Welcome, travelers, to the fringes of reality, where the strange and mysterious meet, and the thin veil between fact and fiction is torn. Welcome to the Forbidden Frontier.
All right. Hey, some more Forbidden Frontier bites, clips, whatever the hell they are. We're at Cosmic Summit 2024, and you're going to know this guy, Luke Caverns.
How's it going, man?
How's it going, brother?
Good to see you, man.
It's good to see you, too. By the way, best presentation of the weekend, and that includes Robert Schock's, which was pretty effing good. But yours was the best because I thought you brought the newest information. So tell me about a little bit about your presentation and your latest video, which is up on his channel right now. Subscribe to him now. He's woefully undersubscribed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that.
Sure.
It's crazy to hear.
Criminally
say
undersubscribed.
Yeah. It's I'm sorry. What did you ask me again? That was just such a nice compliment. It was crazy to hear.
I showered him with too much praise. I'll bring you down there. You're also an asshole, but but you're amongst friends. So your last video about the Olmecs, right?
Yeah.
And your presentation about the Olmecs, and knowing that you've literally gone in the weeds down there, and more than others. And your thing, everybody has to have a thing, is finding the lost cities, finding, not just lost civilizations, lost cities, which there are a ton of.
Yeah.
What I found most interesting in your video was like those very loose connections to probably not, but possibly Egypt with just the headdresses. But you had mentioned that giant Olmec head had been found 60 feet.
Yeah.
Not 6 feet, not 16 feet, 60 feet. What does that say? I mean, like, they couldn't have buried it. Is it sentiment? Is it, what do you think?
Well, it's tough because 60 feet really doesn't fit very well with the rest of the archaeological record of the Olmecs. And we were shocked to hear 60 feet. There was a farmer at San Lorenzo, for everybody listening. San Lorenzo is one of the 7 fertile crescents of the ancient world. It's one of the places where civilization was birthed, and it's like a 3.5-hour car ride out into literally the middle of nowhere. They open up this rusted gate, and you walk into farmland, and you see these little hills that are, I bet you that site is 20,000 years old. And yeah, he told us that he was there when he was 19. This is the mid 1900s, and they're excavating heads that are 60 feet below the ground. And the idea is that they were intentionally buried, kind of similar to Göbekli Tepe, that it was intentionally filled in with rubble and then buried. And we have really absolutely no idea why. And 60 feet, gosh, that sounds like quite a feat to even dig a hole that deep. Like the amount that you have to move out of the way to get a head down there. But yeah, there's just so much about the Mesoamerican world that can't be explained. And I think that the purpose of trying to find a lost city is that, in 1562, when Diego de Landa, he gathers all of the Maya codices, and he basically enslaves the Maya people and forces them to go into the jungles, into their villages and communities, and take all these sacred scrolls. And they brought them to the city of Merida, and they cast them down in these pyres. And so a pyre is a small mound, I don't know, 6 to 10 feet tall, and imagine how many books you could stack in multiple pyres like that. And he burned it all to ash. And they had been gathering that knowledge for 2,000 years. And so if there are hundreds of cities left in the jungles of Central America and South America as well. And if I were able to find something like that, and it led to the discovery of just another codex.
Yeah.
You know, it opens up our understanding. I mean, there are books this thick about one codex. It's called, I think it's the Foundation of Mesoamerican Astronomy, and it's over the Dresden Codex. So decoding the Dresden Codex, basically what it did was these archaeologists and explorers are walking around Maya ruins, not really having any understanding at all as to where the buildings are pointing in this jungle and why they all strangely point at each other, why they have these strange columns at the front of the buildings and inside the buildings. And, you know, they all seem similar, but they can't figure out, you know, what are the connections here. When they finally decode the Dresden Codex, they learn that the Maya world is based on astronomy. And then they cut back the tree line and they realize that the stars are connected to the temples. And that's why the temples are aligned the way they are. And so imagine like you're pulling the lid off of archaeology from one codex. And we only have 3 surviving, and they think there may be a 4th one, but they're not sure if it's fraudulent or not. But I mean, the discovery of a 5th codex would, you know, it would be very, very significant.
And is that kind of your goal?
That would be my goal. That would be my goal. That a discovery that I made led to the discovery of a codex. The likelihood is that I will never actually find one myself, because I can be an explorer all day long and go and survey things. But the moment I start putting my hands and pulling temples apart, trying to look for something, that's extremely against the law. Yeah. And you need an archaeological team to do that. It's not something I would ever do. But if I were able to discover something that led to the discovery of a codex, that would be like my ultimate life's goal, you know.
Achievement unlocked. That would be freaking rad.
Yeah.
No, it would blow the lid off of everything. And you know there has to be one out there in a city, in a jungle.
Yeah. My professor found one at the city of Copan. So my professor, Dr. Barnhart, when he was my age, he found a city in the jungles of Belize. And then that's not where he found the codex. But in the city of Copan, he was excavating a site, and he was down underneath the temple. And they have these little clay scroll jars. They're cylindrical jars, and you could fold the codex and slide them in, and it would have a lid to protect them. He found one of those and opened it, and on the inside, because of the humidity of the area, it had turned into red and blue and white goo. And so he pulled it out, and it was just goo paper. But he found a 5th codex, but it was like
destroyed.
Elmer's glue. Yeah.
That's horrible, but that also tells you that they're out there, and they have to be out there.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
And going back to the intentionally burying stuff, I think it was Ben who was talking about this. Is something I had heard at all, like that maybe some of the places in Egypt are intentionally buried. And he was mentioning the clay brick, and we're just seeing similarities, or like we got a lot of new Göbekli Tepe information that we won't go into here.
Yeah.
That can make it like not impossibly old, but pushes stuff back if it's a possibility. And you just mentioned, this is the one thing that I don't find controversial at all. Like, instead of civilization being 6,000 years old, maybe it's 20. Like, we're pushing it back, 10,000 years, a little more, but it's not insane. It's not insane to think about this.
Well, the thing that I think is so amazing about Göbekli Tepe is that it's not like this satellite site so in 1993 or 1995 when it's discovered, and what's funny is it's discovered by a farmer. He kicked one of the top stones. He's like walking and he stubs his toe. Yeah, that's how the Olmec heads were found.
No way.
Yeah, it was a farmer, and he's tilling his land, stubs his toe on the top of the forehead of an Olmec head, and then they uncover that, and that's like 1862 or something. So it's funny that they're both intentionally buried sites, both found the same way. And I think at Göbekli Tepe, they always go back and forth like, well, it wasn't intentional, it was intentional. I think it was. But anyways, it's what makes Göbekli Tepe and the discovery of it more fascinating is that it's not like this 12,000-year-old Mecca satellite anomaly site where they're the only ones that did it and nobody else was doing it. And so, yeah, that happened 12,000 years ago, but it doesn't have anything to do with civilization that happened 6,000 years ago. Now, as they're discovering more and more and more, they're realizing that Göbekli Tepe, they're filling in the gaps between there and Mesopotamia. They're finding cities. So Göbekli Tepe is 11,500 or 11,600 years old. Now they're finding cities that are 8,000 years old. Now they're finding cities that are 7,000 years old. So they're weaving together the story, and we have the solid piece of we have a solid body of evidence pushing civilization further back all the way to the Ice Age, and I think that's so much more significant than just that one satellite Göbekli Tepe site. So yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and we had Hugh in. There's so many other sites. It's 38 that are known. There's so much more that's unknown. Karahan Tepe was definitely buried intentionally. So they can argue about Göbekli Tepe all they want, and there's back and forth on the narrative, and the new information is interesting, because they mentioned yesterday that they can't date the T-pillars at all. There's just no way. Not. Yeah, but what I find, I would just like the truth, right? I think a site like Malta, just in my opinion, and I'm an idiot, but I think Malta's way older than they think it is. Not 50,000 years, but maybe 8,000 years instead of 6 or 7. Well, that's what it was close to anyway. It was previously the oldest one until we found Göbekli Tepe. And as they're filling in these blanks in this field, this is why this conference is the most interesting one I've been to in a long time, because there's actual information. We're getting real information mixed in with a lot of speculation, sure. But I think George did a good mix of bringing somebody like you in, because listen, we want to foster peace in this realm. In the realm I'm in, pop culture, there is no peace. There's always bickering and infighting. But I hate to see it here, because you guys are truth seekers, right?
Yeah.
And it was great seeing. I saw you comment on Twitter. Graham and Zahi Hawass kind of made peace and had dinner together, and I think that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't like Zahi Hawass that much, but I think if we are all working together, it's good. Did you see the Flint Dibble debunking video?
Yeah.
I saw part of it. I can't comment because I haven't seen the whole thing, but even him talking to Graham though, and Graham, I thought they had a pretty good. And you broke it down great in your video. I thought they had a pretty good talk. How important is it for people to kind of swallow their pride in this field and move forward with just finding the truth?
Yeah, I think right now it's paramount, because do you remember at the end of that debate when Flint Dibble is talking about that at the university he works at in Wales, that they're shutting down different archaeological departments because there's just not enough funding, and that all over the world archaeological departments are being shut down. And there's this, I don't know what the hoopla is really about Göbekli Tepe lately. They say that they're going to fill some of it in with concrete. I'm not sure if that's how true that is.
Yeah.
But people always wonder, these archaeological sites, why do they only excavate 5% of it and then the rest of it can't get excavated? It's because there's no funding. Now, that's unfortunate, but it's also sort of the fault of the people who could be getting funding, because they could be reaching out to guys like Graham Hancock and say, hey, just straight up, we're never going to agree on this, but we should work together because your audience and people in the field and enthusiasts of archaeology want to see these sites get excavated. Let's work together to build enthusiasm around it and, get these sites excavated, release the information to the public. You and your audience, come to your conclusions, do whatever you want, speak about whatever you want, but let's work together to get these sites excavated. But I feel like they shoot themselves in the foot by making enemies of people like Graham, rather than having some tact and coming to it strategically and using people with that kind of audience and reach to the benefit of archaeology as a whole. But they've really kind of turned themselves into, and I say this as somebody with an anthropology degree and tons of friends who are archaeologists, some archaeologists have really turned themselves into the villain in this story and taken it way, way, way over the top. And I think that they have failed to recognize that the people they're attacking are the ones with the audience and the people with access to funding. And so I hope that, I think at the end of that debate, when Flint and Graham both agreed that the temperature in the room needed to come down, I feel like that caused a rift on Twitter, and a lot of people on the other side, or a lot of people on the academic side and a lot of people on the alt side started treating each other a little bit better. I feel like I've noticed that. And I hope that as my presence continues to grow, and I literally refuse to get caught in any of that toxicity. I hope that kind of permeates throughout the fields and builds some kind of bridge.
I hope so too, because we need Randall and Graham working together. We need Robert Schock and Randall and Graham working together, and we need if you want funding.
Yeah.
If you want funding, you go out to those three people. You take advantage of Ancient Apocalypse. That thing was a massive hit, and it got a lot of different eyes on this. Here's the progression, right? So we have Eric, we have Velikovsky and Eric von Daniken, and for me, it was reading those books, Charles Berlitz, and then went to Art Bell. And then it went to Ancient Aliens, and it was all woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
But Ancient Aliens really opened the door for a lot of what's going on here, whether people like it or not. Because a lot of people like me were like, okay, this is really interesting stuff. Don't think it's aliens.
Yeah.
Think it's us.
Yeah.
And that moved it. Joe Rogan brings on Randall and Graham and others, Christopher Dunn recently, and that brings more people into it. A show hits Netflix, and now there is tons of interest in archaeology. Yeah, and archaeology is losing money. It's because they're just stuck in their narrative and their paradigm. And what you said, they need to, if they have endless funding out there right now, if they would just make peace. Mm-hmm. Zayuwas, I think, recognized that's probably why he made friends with Graham, because the tourism in Egypt right now and the tours you guys run, Ben and you and Wandering Wolf, and there's so many, like Megalithomania, they're all running like really great tours, getting special access to everything, and that's money. That's money that they want. Yeah. Plus, it gets more eyes on their culture. There's nothing wrong. There's no downside. Just because people speculate Atlantis, and if they want to get in the woo-woo crystal stuff, that's fine. But I don't think it's that unusual it's mythology. People love mythology. They love a mystery. Yeah. And if there's more to our story, which there is, there's so nothing but there's so much to find out. Let's find it out. It's fun. It's like, we'll never get the answer, not in our lifetime, but if we get a couple, that's brilliant. You find a codex somewhere, they find another Dead Sea Scrolls, Lost Ark of the Covenant at some Russian oligarch's house. Yep. They have all the good stuff. The collectors have all the good stuff. So I think it's important. And also we have a whole new generation coming into this, like a younger generation. Ufology isn't in such a bad way right now. Mm-hmm. They're aging out. And there's so much infighting, but this ancient civilizations it's where the cool kids are at right now.
Yeah, I feel like it's, since Ancient Aliens began, and I mean before that, but the wildfire has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that, people are starting to come to the realization that humans did all of this, but there's still so much left to be explained. And I find it, even if we just look at the pyramids, for example, I find it funny that sometimes people who attack people in the alt community will say something that's like, they'll say, I don't know, they'll say something as simple as well, it's obvious that the Egyptians built the pyramids, case closed, blah, blah, blah. But never really explain how it was built, how all of this was done. And it feels like there's this odd pushback where people like us want to dive into and kind of just obsess and fangirl over ancient cultures and the cool stuff that they did. I find it really odd that some people want to downplay that, but it's just amazing. You look back at ancient history. Ancient Egypt is essentially it's like the as far as we know, it's the ancient world's first megalopolis. You know what I mean? It's just civilization on a whole other scale. And in at least the last 4,500 to 6,000 years, it's never been eclipsed by anybody. Mm-mm. The kind of monumental architecture that they created at, quote unquote, the beginning of time, it's just absolutely endlessly fascinating. Even if the dynastic Egyptians are responsible for it, there's so much left to be explained there. And so I just feel like it's so important that academics should recognize that there are people who are enthusiastic about it and not shut down their wonder. You know, I see that on Twitter too. There are people who are like, oh yeah, you know, these guys who just perpetuate the mysteries, they want to perpetuate the wonder. Yeah, I'm like,
yes.
I'm like, yeah.
That's job security for an
yeah.
archaeologist too.
Yeah, yeah. And I think people have forgotten that archaeology is like a romance and an art as much as it is a science and anything else. Archaeology is romantic. And we're at this point where like people are wanting everything, or, you know, they want to embrace the romance, and then there's the opposite side is this very cold, negative side. Something that's very foreign to me. I couldn't live in that world.
Yeah, I couldn't either. I can't get my head around the skeptic, right? They exist, and like it's good to be skeptical, but just to be automatically skeptic and just not believe in anything, it's I think it's a personal issue.
Yeah. I totally agree.
I think it's a deep-seated personal issue.
There are some guys in this ancient history realm. We need a name for this genre. I have no idea. I've tried to like this ancient civ genre. I don't know what it would be.
Ancient civ works. I mean, like ufology has ufology and UFO Twitter. We don't have ancient civ Twitter, but we need it.
Yeah, there needs to be something needs to be coined. I don't know
Work
exactly
on that,
what it is.
audience. The audience will think of something.
Yeah. You guys think of something, because I have been trying to think like ancient civ genre doesn't like come off the tongue, you know.
No.
Yeah, you know, we are building this new genre where, you know, I would say that, I don't know, maybe Ben is like on the tip of the spear on this, where he made a YouTube channel about ancient history, making his own documentaries, and it's like exploded into its own genre where everyone is joining in on the topic on YouTube and talking about ancient civilizations. And it started in this alt world where people are trying to give things alternate explanations, you know, and that has a wide range of people's beliefs, all the way from Anunnaki people coming from, you know, planets in the solar system, to people who are like, well, I think the Egyptians did it, we just don't know how. There's some other explanation here that is invisible in the archaeological record. You know, there's a wide range here. But the other side is starting to chime in now too. And there are people who are, you know, academics and I guess mainstream, that also now have their own YouTube channels, and they're also expressing their own points of view. And I think that's a good thing.
That's really good.
I love that, and we're starting to build this new genre. But yeah, I just hope that the toxicity comes down, and there's some way to be amicable with each other. And I thought that it's amazing what you said, that archaeology has never been more popular, but the practice is dying.
The practice is dying.
Yeah.
Well, it started out amateur. That's where it probably should be.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be accredited. I mean, you certainly don't want people bulldozing in the sites, and like nobody wants that. But we also don't want crazy fundamentalists blowing up, 3,000-year-old statues. We can't stop it. But I think a lot of people who are, listen, there's human beings in everything, right? In our pop culture, in my comic book world, there's comic collectors who screw people over all the time.
Yeah.
And there's, treasure hunters who are screwing people or who are frauds out there, but we can't let that stop like the genuine curiosity and what you said, wonder. That's what I love about doing this, is that there's still some wonder to life and mystery to life.
Yeah.
And the older you get, not to sound like a dad or an old man here, but you want to hold on to that, because there's nothing wrong with still having that childlike wonder about life.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well,
it's good for the soul.
And it's noticeable, it's noticeable. People who are older that still have that wonder, they don't, like you can see the youthfulness in them, and like some people, their soul like dies, and then 50 years later they're buried. Yeah. And to I don't know.
That's a good point. No, that's a really good point. There's a lot of really old 35-year-olds out there, and there's a lot of really young 72-year-olds out there.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of them here.
Yeah.
The crowd is eclectic here. That's good, and it's younger, right?
Yeah.
So, well done, George. You did a great presentation.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, my friend. You can watch it on HowTube, right? HowTube.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so it's going to be up forever. Highly recommend the entire conference. Ben did a great talk. You did the best. I'll tell everybody that. Robert Schock gave a great one. Randall's still going. He's been going for 6 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And he'll go for 6 more. He's going like right now as we speak. It's freaking awesome. We love Randall. And please subscribe to Luke Caverns' channel. You also have 600,000 followers on Instagram?
Well, Instagram's like approaching 300.
300. Where do you have 600,000? Did I hear 600?
Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never made it on Facebook, man.
Yeah. I don't know how
done.
I don't know how these things happen, but now I'm just focused on YouTube and really growing that and long form content.
And it's really his last video on the Olmecs, the last one I saw. Brilliant stuff. So thanks for coming on, and we'll see you on Forbidden Frontier soon.
Man. Hey, thank you.
Take care, brother.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Yes, we will. Thanks. Sorry we went over, but I like talking.
Oh, it's okay.
Welcome, travelers, to the fringes of reality, where the strange and mysterious meet, and the thin veil between fact and fiction is torn. Welcome to the Forbidden Frontier.